What's going on, everybody? Rowan here. And I was like, should I go read or should I make a video about books instead? And here we are. I saw Steve Donahue do this tag yesterday, I think, and filed it away in the back of my head, and now have decided to do it. It is the book shopping tag that is about how you shop for books, which is something that I love doing. I love going book shopping. So, question 1. How do you buy books? Physically, because you believe in the power of touch, or online, because interactions are overrated? Both. I think probably, obviously everybody does both. I would say that when I go to a bookstore, I'm usually not looking for anything in particular. Or at least, not one specific thing. I do often, when I'm at bookstores, use my, Goodreads want to read list as reference and look for those books while I'm there at the store. But if I'm just I want to buy this specific book, a lot of the times I will get it online because I know that I will be able to get it. Not when you go to the bookstore, you won't always find what you're looking for. Last month into earlier this month, I think I kind of was I want to pick up a copy of Interior Chinatown, and I had to go to 4 stores, I think, before I found one. And it wasn't an immediate need. I wasn't actively searching for it. It was just every time I went to the bookstore, I was I'm going to see if they have this, and if they do, I'm going to get it. But, it didn't happen right away because not every store has every book. So I think that they both have benefits and things that I don't like. I do love the activity of being in a bookstore, being surrounded by books, being around a staff who likes books and you can talk to about them if you are into talking to people, which I know not everybody is. Question 2. Do you prefer bigger bookshops or smaller ones? Bigger, because there's more stuff. I mean, I do prefer indie stores to Barnes and Noble. I would rather support a small business. But just in terms of square footage, I do like bigger stores, generally speaking, because there's more stuff. Some place here locally, like Majors and Quinn, which I believe square footage wise is probably the biggest bookstore in the city. You find stuff there that you won't find other places. They just have more selection. Do you prefer to buy books when they are brand new, being the first to touch them, and it being in great condition, or do you prefer used ones, the book having character, history, and personality? So I don't really care about any of that. I prefer cheap books because I don't have a lot of money. And I never have. I've always been broke my whole life. So used books are usually what I get because of I can get more that way. I'm not opposed to buying new books. I will buy them. Buying a new book always feels like a gamble, though, especially a hardcover. I read earlier this year, I read Sorrowland by Rivers Solomon, and it wasn't bad by any stretch of the imagination, but I was also man, I paid $25 for this book, and that kind of sucks, because I could have gotten so many used books, especially at Goodwill or thrift stores. I went out, I did a video going out to thrift stores going book shopping. I got 15 books for $25. So that's my main concern. I don't really care about the condition. I don't care about a book being in pristine condition. I also don't really care about it having character. I think that honestly, feeling like books have character and history and personality, that's like some weird projecting. You're projecting shit onto an inanimate object. I'm sorry. Number 4, are you a coupon TLC level crazy person or a full price Sweet 16 MTV person? So this question obviously is asking, do you prefer the show Extreme Couponing from the Learning Channel, or do you prefer my Super Sweet 16 from Music Television? The obvious choice is Extreme Couponing. In terms of the actual nature of this question, I don't think of myself as either. I do try to save money and cut corners and get things as cheaply as possible, just because like I don't have the privilege of money being, flowing in my life right now. But I don't think I'd call myself a coupon crazy person. If I can find things for cheap, I get them. A lot of the times, if I can't find something for cheap, I don't get it. Number 5, read, research, analyze Sherlock Holmes-style, or impulse buy like a shopaholic. I guess I lean more towards the read and research, though I don't know if I would say that it is anything comparable to the works of Sherlock Holmes. Doing your research about books in tandem with knowing what you like, being in touch with yourself and your preferences, will lead to you enjoying your books more, because you're going to be reading things that you actually like more often. If I'm at a bookstore and a book calls out to me from the shelf and it looks interesting, I'm going to look it up on my phone. I'm going to read about it. I'm going to see what people have to say about it. I'm going to see if anybody that I know on Goodreads has read it, and if so, what they think about it. I'm not just going to go in blind based off of the back of the book, because I've been burned. I think we all have. And it's an investment of time and money when you buy a book. There have been instances in my life where I've gone in blind. I think most notably 2666 by Roberto Bolaño. I remember when the hardcover of it came out, I saw it at Majors and Quinn and on the new release wall, and it kind of jumped out at me because the cover is very striking, and it was, it's a big fat book, and I've always been attracted to long books, particularly when I was younger. Maybe even more so, I was attracted to long books. So I sort of filed it away in the back of my head, and then when the paperback came out, I was at a different bookstore that no longer exists, called Booksmart, saw it, and just sort of impulsively decided to buy it, and I didn't really know anything about it. But then the guy at Booksmart, when I was ringing up, he was like, "Do you like David Foster Wallace?" And I was like, "Yeah, why?" And he was like, "You're gonna like this book." And I was like, "Cool," because this was in, when the paperback of 2666 came out, that would have been 2009, 2010. So, before the cult of Wallace had really become what it is now, that would have only been like a year or two after he passed. And that is one of my favorite books. So, sometimes a book finds you, but most of the time I prefer to do some research. Number 6, a book or two at a time or a full cart pandemic style until the mailman dies. Usually a book or two at a time, but again, purely for financial reasons. Like earlier this year, I got the stimulus check and my tax return like at the same time, and I was pretty flush with cash. And I went to Half Price and I got like $70 worth of books. I got like 10 books or something. Big stack. But usually, I'm only going to get a couple, just because. Part of it is because like I want to keep the amount that I accrue low so that I don't end up with too many things that are just sitting on the shelf. part of it is saving money. Part of it is not necessarily when I'm looking for, I'm usually at a used bookstore, and so that, like, the number of things that I actually find that I want to read is not always very high. But like yesterday, my friend Ellie and I went to see the Sparks Brothers, the new documentary about Sparks that Edgar Wright made. Very good, by the way. Highly recommend it, even if you don't know who Sparks is. She didn't know who they were, and she really enjoyed it too. But afterwards, we were like 2 blocks from Majors and Quinn. The movie theater was like 2 blocks away. So we walked over there, and I picked up... I was like... I just did this video a couple days ago about Dennis Cooper's favorite fiction of the year so far. So I was like, I'm going to look for books from this list. And I found 2. I found You Will Love What You Have Killed by Kevin Lambert. This was originally published in like 2017 in French. He's Quebecois. And then I found Elidatul. I don't know if you're supposed to like actually pronounce it, but that stands for East Los Angeles Dirigible Air Transport Line, by Seshu Foster and Arturo Romo. This was like one of the ones on the list that I was like the most excited about reading, and it only has like 20 ratings on Goodreads, but they had a copy of it. I was very excited about that. But I only got 2 books because I'm like pretty broke right now. And, two books was $32. That's like a tank of gas, almost. I have to be conscious about things like that. New and recent releases or older and classics. I'm like a solid 5 years ago kind of guy, because that's like when they get cheap, right? Like, I don't think I've posted this anywhere yet, but I just started reading A Little Life, because I got it as one of my 2. Rick McDonnell just did BookTube Spin 3 and Spun twice, which I was grateful for because the first result, I got a Blake Butler book, and I had just started trying to read a different Blake Butler book and kind of hit a wall and burned out on it, so I was like not really trying to read that. But the other result I got was A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara, if you don't know. This is a very popular book that came out in 2015. A lot of people have read it. It was a finalist for the National Book Award. It was a finalist for the Man Booker Prize, I'm pretty sure. But, like, now is the time for me to read it 5 years later. Because usually, like, I don't read things until I can get them used for cheap. Just because that's the way that it's always been. When I worked at Barnes & Noble, I was much more on top of things because I got an employee discount and things like that. Same with when I worked at Half Price. Every once in a while, like, newer books would come through, and I would pick them up. And if there's a new book by an author I really love, usually I'll buy it. Like, I'm not opposed to recent releases. These 2 that I just picked up at Majors and Quinn are both 2021 releases. But so I don't, like, I'm not a classics guy. I don't really like pre-20th century literature very much. Sorry, it's just not my thing. Yeah, so I'm neither a new or old book. I am a, oh yeah, I read that book a couple years ago kind of guy. That's just who I am. Are you a pre-order total fan freak, or wait until it arrives at the bookshop because it can wait? This is kind of a similar question, I guess. If there's a book that's coming out by an author I really like, and I really want to read it, I will pre-order it. The last thing I did this for was Bubblegum by Adam Levin. As soon as I found out that book was going to come out, I pre-ordered it immediately, because I wanted it as soon as possible. I will say that, like, I don't find out about books before they come out super often, unless it's an author who I already am a fan of and follow. So, I don't pre-order books very often. Nine. Do you prefer special, expensive, beautiful covers, color edges, and unique editions, or is the inside of the book what counts? I'm going to say it's the inside of the book that counts for me. I understand the appeal of having really nice, pretty, cool editions of books because they are like an artifact, like a physical piece of art, and that's great. But like I have made abundantly clear in this video, cheapness is the main driving force behind my decisions to purchase. And so things that are cheap are rarely nice. They are often beat up, and I don't care. I don't think I own any really nice books other than I do have a book of Alex Soth's photography, and all of his photography books are like limited run collector's pieces, and my mom bought it for me because she's a picture framer, and she does a lot of framing for Soth. He's a local artist here to the Twin Cities, so he's not like, he's a known, internationally known artist, but he lives here in the cities. And so for my birthday one year, this book had just come out, and she got it for me, and I have it. It's she made me an acid-proof box to keep it in so that it would stay nice. So it just lives in a box, and sometimes I take it out and I look at the pictures and they make me feel good. Picture your favorite book. Okay. Do you show your love by buying multiple copies, or do you believe in single true love? Actually, right next to my desk here, have a box of books that I am planning to get rid of. And in this box, I have these. Because I found, this one is the one that I had for a number of years. I would, for years, whenever I would find a copy of this book, I would buy it and give it to people. Back in the day, in the 2000s, you would find it at the thrift store pretty often. So I would buy copies and give them away. So I never had like a one copy that was my copy. But this was the one that I kind of wound up with and had for many, many years. And then this one I found for free when I worked at Half Price. Things would get sent to our outlet center. And if it was in the box to get sent to the outlet center, you could, basically get it for free. Not always, but like generally you could get it for free. And so it's really beat up. It's got some coffee stains on the spine you can kind of see, and the cover is frayed, and it's just, not in great shape. So I got it for free. But then I found a copy of the not most recent, but a more recent, I think it was the 10th anniversary or 15th anniversary paperback that has the foreword by Dave Edgars in it. I found that at the thrift store a couple months ago for a couple bucks, and so I bought it just because I always buy this book when I find it. And I'm going to keep that one instead of the one that I had for many years, just because it's in better shape and it's got that forward, which is cool. And so I've got these two in my box of stuff to get rid of. Because I don't really know anybody anymore in my life who I feel like I could give that book to and they would actually read it. Generally, like, all my friends at this point in my life either like have read it, already have it, or are not going to read it. So, I don't know what I'm going to do with them. Probably give them to little free libraries. I don't know. We'll see. But in answer to the question, yes, I do buy multiple copies. Traditionally that's been the book that I think of as my favorite. I have maybe reassessed that a bit in recent years and don't really feel like I have a favorite anymore. But, yeah. 11. Name some of your favorite places to bookshop. I've done this before. I've talked about this before. I've even done some book shopping videos where I've gone to bookstores. And I will continue to do that. I will do that again in the future. We are very blessed in the Twin Cities to have so many bookstores, and none of them are, I would think of as bad. There are ones that only sell new books, and so usually I don't go to them because, for the reasons I have made very clear here, I usually don't buy new books. I usually don't read things that are recently released. I try and get them used and old and cheap. So, first thing I'll mention is a bookstore that I've already mentioned a couple times in this video, which is Majors & Quinn. This is in the Uptown neighborhood of Minneapolis. It is the biggest bookstore in the cities. They sell both new and used books. Other stores, Midway Books in St. Paul. This is on the intersection of Snelling and University. It's, I believe, the busiest intersection in the entire metro area, traffic volume-wise. I used to live about 5 blocks away from this intersection for a couple years, in the Midway neighborhood of St. Paul. That's why it's called Midway Books. It's called Midway because it's midway between the downtowns of Minneapolis and St. Paul. This is a used bookstore, but they do also sell comic books. They get like new books every week, new comic books. With a focus, they have a lot of antique books, like vintage paperbacks, pulp novels, vintage pornography, which is pretty cool. They have an upper floor, a main floor, and a basement. The basement is all clearance, which is super awesome. They have tons of clearance comics, which is great. It is notorious for having not very kind people that work there. Like, they're kind of snobbish. But I don't really mind that because I don't interact with them. So, that's a great store. It's been around for forever, too. It's been around since, like, the 60s, I think. Dreamhaven is another one of my favorites. Dreamhaven is a bookstore in South Minneapolis that specializes in science fiction and fantasy books and comic books. They have new and used books. They also have a lot of like cool vintage stuff, antique books, pulp paperbacks, vintage pornography. They are also the proprietors of it are friends with Neil Gaiman, who for many years lived just across the border in Wisconsin, and so they have tons of Neil Gaiman stuff and rare Neil Gaiman stuff and signed Neil Gaiman stuff all the time, which if you're into Neil Gaiman, that's pretty cool. It's not a small shop either. It's like I'd call it medium sized, and it's just like there's so much passion. You can feel the passion of the space, and you can find cool stuff there that you don't find anywhere else. They have a lot, like, since the whole store is just science fiction fantasy, the selection is pretty great. They are able to have things in the genre that most stores wouldn't have because they don't have space for it. So that's pretty cool. I love that place. Moon Palace Books. This is a bookstore that is all new, so I don't go there super often, but they are a sort of like politically left store that is like active in the community, and they are great. They're all great people. And there's also a pizza restaurant in the back of the bookstore called Geek Love Cafe, which is great. And it's a couple blocks away from this place called the Trilon Micro Cinema. That's a 100-seat micro cinema that plays entirely like art films and like B movies and weird shit. And I am a longtime obsessive devotee of the Trilon. I go there all the time. And it's just a couple blocks away from Moon Palace, so I stop in at Moon Palace every once in a while just because I'm in the area. So Moon Palace is great. Cream and Amber is a very tiny bookstore that's in my hometown of Hopkins, Minnesota, in the suburbs. It is a bookstore that also has coffee and beer on tap. So you can get a beer, and then sit on their patio and read a book. Very cool idea. The size of the store does, it's limited. It's very small. It's a very small store. But I go there pretty regularly because I live so close to it. And the people who run it are great, very kind. And they have, it's mostly new, but they do have a shelf of used books. So I can score there. I recently found Deacon King Kong there for $8, and that, it's not like a new release, but it came out last year, so that's cool. Paperback Exchange is a store that's in South Minneapolis on 50th. This is a fairly small store. It's one of those stores that's like cramped as shit. Like, it's like floor to ceiling books. There's like a good selection, even though it's pretty small, just because they're all crammed in there, and it's all used. Every time I go there, I find something good. Definitely gonna have to shout out one of the coolest bookstores in the cities. I don't hardly ever go there, for reasons that will become apparent. But it's Wild Rumpus. This is also in South Minneapolis. It is a children's bookstore, so I don't have a ton of reason to go there. But it is known for its animals. They have tons and tons of animals that live in the store of all kinds. Some free range and some in enclosures. They have like chickens, free range chickens. Last time I was there they did. And cats and a dog. And they have rodents and snakes and birds and anything you can think of. Just throughout the store, just tons of animals, and you can interact with them. And then it's a children's bookstore. They do have like a very, very small adult section. But if I'm going to Wild Rumpus, it's to play with animals, not to get books. So I don't go there very often, but I definitely want to shout them out because it is a very unique, very cool store that deserves attention. And then I'm gonna quickly eulogize Uncle Edgar and Uncle Hugo's, which was a bookstore just off of the intersection of Lake and Chicago in South Minneapolis, which was split into two halves. Uncle Edgar's, which exclusively sold mysteries, and Uncle Hugo's, which exclusively sold science fiction and fantasy. It had been around for forever, and they had tons of cool... In the front, they had like a sort of section of like zines and newsletters from like fantasy societies and science fiction societies and like Tolkien fan clubs and stuff. And they had back issues going back to like the 70s. It was just like all this cool like esoteric fandom stuff, and it was always like a hot mess in there. There were books all over the floor, stacked in piles. You'd have to dig through just like mountainous piles of shit to find what you were looking for. And it was great. It was like the kind of bookstore that you like. For me, it has the most character, right? And again, like, I didn't go there all the time because it was like very specific, and like I don't read mysteries, so I wouldn't even go into the Uncle Edgar's half of the store. But if I was around, I would stop and look and usually find something fun. Unfortunately, it was burned down during the riots last year in the wake of the murder of George Floyd, which I'm sure everyone knows happened here in Minneapolis and has been a very big thing worldwide. But like I'm here, like it happened. It like in I when I was 19. Some of my best friends lived in a basement apartment on 37th and Columbus Avenue in South Minneapolis. And when we would hang out there, we would go get snacks at Cup Foods, which is on 38th in Chicago, about 2 blocks away. And that's where George Floyd was murdered, was outside of Cup Foods. So it's like a very real thing in my life. And like the precinct that was burned down, that is about a half a mile away from where I went to college, where I lived when I went to college, the Target and the Cub Foods that were also set on fire, that was where I got groceries when I was in college. So yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna get into how necessarily the ethics of arson and riots, but I will say that I was very sad. It happened at about 4 o'clock in the morning. I was watching a guy on Facebook Live who was on the ground at Chicago and Lake. I think it was the second or third night of the riots, because things had sort of, after they burned the precinct down, things sort of spread out, and shit went down at Chicago and Lake, and he was there all night, and I was like, if these motherfuckers burn down Uncle Hugo's, I'm going to be so sad. And he, at one point, there's a guy, like, hanging out in front of it, and he went up to the guy, and he's like, hey, what's going on? What are you doing? And the guy was like, I just came down here to, like, keep an eye on the store because this is my favorite bookstore, and I've been going here for my whole life. Since I was a little kid, I would come here to get Dungeons and Dragons modules for my campaigns, and I just wanted to make sure that it was okay. And then 30 minutes later, someone set it on fire, and it burned down, and it's gone forever. And that sucks. That broke my heart. So yeah, there was a GoFundMe, and there are vague plans to rebuild, reopen, but it's not going to be the same. Like how I was talking about all of those historical fanzines and stuff, that's all ash. It's gone. Very unfortunate. I've talked a lot about bookstores here in the Twin Cities, and if you are not in the Twin Cities, do you care? Because you're probably never going to come here or shop at these bookstores at all. I haven't done a ton of book shopping outside of Minnesota. I have been to New York, but it was a very, very brief stint that I was there. I didn't have very much time to see the city. I was there to see a show, and I pretty much had half a day to experience Manhattan, and I went to the Met, and that was the only thing I did. So I didn't get to go to the Strand or any of that. And I've never been to Powell's. I've never been to Portland. Never been to City Lights or San Francisco. So there are a lot of the big famous bookstores elude me. But if you ever want to come visit the Twin Cities, do it in the fall or the spring, because the winters are notorious, and the summers suck too. It's very humid here and unpleasant most of the time in the summer to be outside. But we do have a lot of great bookstores. So we got that going for us. And there are so many more that I didn't even mention. Places like Eat My Words in Northeast Minneapolis, or Subtext in St. Paul, which is an all-new bookstore in downtown St. Paul, or whatever Common Good is now. Common Good was the bookstore that was owned by Garrison Keillor, and then in the wake of everybody canceling him, he sold it and they changed the name of the store. It's called like The Next Letter or some shit like that now. That store is like fine. It's whatever. I never go there because it's all new. There's so many. And that's it. That's the whole video. This one is long again. I guess this is just a thing now. My videos are getting longer. I don't know how I feel about it. Y'all were very kind in the comments of my last video saying that it's okay that they're long, so I'm going to hold you to that. It does make it everything take longer. I have to spend more time doing everything when they're long, so that is a bummer. But I am doing this so that I can avoid and procrastinate actually reading books, so I guess the more time I have to spend editing this, the less time I have to feel bad about the fact that I'm not reading. But yeah, I am reading A Little Life. I am planning on trying to really dive into it. I've only read about 30 pages of it so far. But I am planning on trying to really dive into it this week and get back into the swing of things. So yeah. That is my book shopping tag. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thank you so much. You're so kind. Bye.